Welcome, Jacqui.
Thank you.
So where to start, really? I guess the first question is just a little bit about your organisation, HomeSmiths, and I'm really intrigued that you've grown to pretty much specialise in residential care home settings. Is that right? And how did that come about?
Yes, we started our business in actually bespoke cabinet making, because that's my husband's background, and then we went into interior design from that, but we didn't take on our first what I'd call healthcare sector client until about 12 years ago. And that was a gentleman who was recommended to us from an existing residential client. And he had a chain of care homes for young adults with learning disabilities. So in terms of our first foray into this sector, it was a very steep learning curve, because obviously the needs of that particular type of resident are quite acute at times. And so we had to think about a lot of things we wouldn't have had to think about in our previous projects. And then from then, we got our first project with West Kent Housing Association and did an extra care scheme for them. We still work with them, but we also work with about 4 other different housing associations. And also we started working in sort of care home new build and refurbs at around that same time. So I guess the work has sort of built and grown over the years, and we've still done residential and private work, but I find this particular area really rewarding because it's design that really means something, because it meets the needs of people very specifically in whether it's sensory or cognitive decline, encouraging social engagement, all of those things. And I find the fact that the built environment can do all of that really exciting, and just really, I guess it gives me a sense of purpose, I think, rather than just saying, oh, Mrs. Jones loves her brand new kitchen. This is somebody saying, oh, actually, my medication's changed, my behaviour, you know, the carers might report on residents feeling more relaxed and more engaged because the environment's right for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that, and it shines through when you talk. And it's interesting, isn't it, how like your home environment, the environment around you can actually help with your well-being in so many ways. You've got a particular specialism in interior design for people with visual impairments. Can you maybe share a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. Yes. So in November 2012, I permanently lost the sight in my left eye it was just kind of an overnight thing and permanent. And at the time, I can remember, as much as I'd understood before the importance of designing for deteriorating senses, specifically sight, that importance was really kind of brought home to me through my own experience of living with visual impairment. So I can remember actually sitting in my hospital bed after the operation, and I'm going to pour some water into a glass and completely missing the glass. And the nurse just said to me, she goes, oh, everyone does that. I'm thinking, why would everyone do that? Because I didn't really understand that I was no longer seeing in 3D, I was seeing in 2D. So my depth perception had gone.
Yeah.
So there and then I determined that I was going to use my disability in a positive way to help my work and to educate other designers and like I do lectures as well. And so it kind of grew from there. And also because I've got that experience, I can say to clients, I really do have an understanding of this, and I understand how quite stressful it can be in a new environment where it's not really supportive, and it could easily actually be improved to support people more, but you know, it can be so disabling and really affect your confidence. So that's been my crusade. And I guess because sight loss is invariably part of or goes hand in hand with dementia, you know, the sensory and the cognitive decline side of you know, it's not inevitable for everybody, but you know, that's certainly fading senses is inevitable for everybody. You know, combining those two and specialising in that just seemed something that was natural. And as Mike would say, the fire in my belly, you know, that's what gets me up in the morning thinking that's really improved somebody's life and improved somebody's experience of living in that space. And when we had some feedback recently from a client, and it was from the dementia lead at this particular care home. And whilst a lot of designers, quite rightly and understandably, will say, oh, I got an award for that, and I was recognised for my work, that's lovely. But what was even better for me was to hear from that dementia lead that our ideas and the way we design this particular community and within this care home, she was giving me direct feedback from the people living there and the carers, and how much they're enjoying it. And that I just want a big goosebump. So yeah, that's kind of why it's come. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. You're doing valuable work, and you've got a vocation, clearly.
Yeah.
So family carers, and that we're all about supporting family carers, unpaid family carers. So I guess there's a lot that we can take from you. I guess maybe first drill down into how we can create comfortable environments for our loved ones, and then maybe reflect a little bit about needing to take care of ourselves as well. So top tips, if you're caring for somebody who maybe is sight impaired or maybe dementia, what are your top tips, the things we need to consider when creating safe, comfortable, relaxing environments?
I think for certainly I would always apply the sight loss principles to designing for anybody as they get older, because by the time we hit the age of 40 our sight becomes fixed, and then from that point we might not end up with a visual impairment per se, but we end up with vision that is not as effective as it used to be when we were, say, 18. So the average 18-year-old, or the average 85-year-old should I say, needs 3 times the amount of light hitting their retina to see properly than the average 18-year-old. So we need more light to see, and so lighting is a very, very key thing. And actually good lighting in an environment, and layered lighting and the right colour temperature lighting, all of those create a nice homely, relaxing environment. So nothing worse than going into a space with a massive bright light, got a blue cold light. That's not homely, that's not relaxing. Whereas layering light, having table lamps, task lamps that can be moved around to suit people's needs, and to make sure that, you know, someone's doing a jigsaw or they're doing some crafts, they've got enough light on the subject. And then having the general light itself, whether it's a pendant or it's downlights, being dimmable. So you can change the light levels to suit the mood and the needs of whoever's in that space at the time. So a lounge, you might need more light during certain, you know, when you've got your loved one in the room who needs a bit more light. And then in the evening, if they're in bed and you want a more relaxing environment, then you can dim the light. So lighting's key. Whether you're looking after a loved one or not, I think lighting makes a massive difference to how people feel in their home. Colour contrast is something that I think is probably one of the most important things to get right when you're designing for people either living with dementia or just the ageing eye. So what I mean by colour contrast is not, oh, that's blue and that's red, but every surface reflects light at a different rate. So if you imagine at its extreme, white would be 100 as a value, and black would be 0. So every single surface has that value. And in order for people to see properly between 2 adjacent surfaces, they need 30 degrees difference in those values. So you'll go to a tile manufacturer, a flooring manufacturer, Dulux or paint colours and paint manufacturers, and they will all have what they call a light reflectance value, LRV. And so a real top tip is to actually think about parts of the house where you'd want to really define different surfaces. So it might be a switch, a light switch against a wall. So if you've got a light wall, you want a darker light switch, and vice versa. So people living in that environment can see it very clearly. Painting the doors different colours from the architrave, making sure the door handle contrasts with the door itself. You'll all have seen, I'm sure, in going into assisted bathrooms and WCs, the sort of grab rails, and classically they're white, and classically they're white against a white or an off-white background. Well, that's, you know, yes, you're providing the means to secure yourself when you need to grab the rail, but actually, would you see it clearly? And so it's all of, you know, LRV differentials can be used not just in care homes, but in somebody's own home. So, and flooring should be a different 30 degrees contrast to the skirting boards in order to see that. So if you imagine someone's own, say, a semi-detached house, and you've got a general sort of, I don't know, an oatmeal coloured carpet, and then you go to a doormat that's a black, the differential between those two is too much. So you with flooring, you want it to all be seamless. Otherwise, somebody with a vision impairment, or certainly with dementia, might think that's a step or even a hole.
Yeah.
So colour is a massive topic. I guess I'm only touching the surface of it now. But yeah, so you can achieve colour contrast. Is not about colours being different from each other. It's about the light reflectance values. You could have two blues that contrast. So that's certainly something you could use. And also with colour, I'd think about colour affects us all emotionally. So we all react to colours whether we're aware of it or not. So we'll all have personal reactions to colours and personal associations. So Nikki, I might say to you, what's your least favourite colour? And you might say it's purple, and it might be because your school blazer was purple and you just don't have happy memories of that particular time at school. But we also have very cultural associations with colours. So some colours can sort of suggest death or wealth, or lots of different things like that. But we also react to colour on an unconscious basis. So it's those colours that it's that kind of side of things. It's really important to think about when you're decorating interiors for care homes or residential properties, where certain colours will engage or incite different types of behaviour. So in a bedroom, for instance, I would be using sort of nice soft muted blues or greens or teals. I wouldn't use yellow because there's too much energy in yellow. Whereas in a living environment where you want that energy, yellow is a very cheerful, uplifting, and energetic colour. So certainly for a carer's bedroom, if they've had a long day looking after their loved one, you would want a nice muted, calming palette. And again, going back to the lighting, I would suggest create a real haven for yourself that is your quiet space, and you feel and it's your own, but it's also supporting you from the palette you've decorated it in.
Fantastic advice, and rings really, really true actually in my own experience as well. At the end of the day, retreating to your own room, it needs to be for you, because the rest of your house you adapt for your loved one, but you've got your own sacred space there. So I think it's good for us to take those tips that you've given us. Fascinating stuff about colour contrast and LRV, never knew that. So I'm sure you've given us all a lot of food for thought, and I'd just like to say thanks very much for the time and energy you've spent sharing that with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.